Constantinople was a famous city. It was the heart of the Byzantine Empire. For over 1,000 years it stood strong. Its walls were mighty. Many armies had tried to take it, but Constantinople always survived. It was a jewel of the world. Now, a new enemy was at its gates. The Ottoman Sultan, Mehmed II, had come. He brought a huge army. He wanted this city more than anything. He was young and full of ambition. The year was 1453. The air was thick with fear and unspoken prayers for deliverance. The siege began. It was a terrible sight. The Ottoman army was vast. They had giant cannons. These cannons were new and powerful. They fired huge stone balls at the ancient walls. Boom! The sound echoed across the water. Boom! The ground shook with each impact. The defenders were brave, but they were few. The Emperor, Constantine XIII Palaiologos, knew this was a desperate fight. He had asked for help from the west, but not enough help came. He had to rely on his own people and a few loyal allies from distant lands. The people of Constantinople watched in terror. Day after day the cannons roared. The walls, once so proud, began to crumble. Dust filled the air. Smoke rose from fires. Yet the defenders fought back with all their might. They poured hot oil on the attackers. They fired arrows and stones. They repaired the walls as best they could under the constant fire. The great chain across the Golden Horn, a massive waterway, held back the Ottoman ships for a time. It was a symbol of their resistance, a defiant stand against an overwhelming tide. But hope was a fragile thing. The Ottoman army was relentless. Sultan Mehmed was clever. He even found a way to move his ships over land. He bypassed the great chain. This was a terrible blow. The city was now attacked from the sea as well. Food was running low. Ammunition was scarce. The defenders grew tired. Their bodies ached. Their spirits were tested. The great city, the queen of cities, was trembling on the edge of a precipice, its fate hanging precariously in the balance. The whispers of doom grew louder with each passing day. Emperor Constantine VII watched his city suffer. He was a true leader. He was brave. He never showed his fear. He walked the walls day and night. He encouraged his soldiers. He shared their dangers. He knew the history of his empire. He knew what it meant to be Roman. He carried the weight of centuries on his shoulders. This city was the last piece of a once great power. He would not let it fall easily. His heart ached for his people, for the homes being destroyed, for the lives being lost in its defense. One day, terrible news arrived. The news spread like wildfire. A section of the outer wall had finally given way. The Janissaries, the Sultan's best soldiers, were pouring in. Or perhaps it was a small gate, the Kirkoporta, mistakenly left open. The details were confused in the chaos, but the meaning was clear. The enemy was inside. The city's defenses were breached. Constantine understood immediately. This was the beginning of the end. His face, already etched with worry and exhaustion, grew pale beneath the grime of battle. A great sadness filled the emperor, but there was no time for despair. He had to act. He gathered his closest commanders. His voice was firm, though his eyes showed his sorrow. He spoke of courage. He spoke of duty. He reminded them of their faith and their history. He told them they must fight to the very last man. There would be no surrender. They would meet their fate with honor. He knew this was likely his final address, his last words to those who had stood by him through the long, dark weeks of the siege. The city was filled with noise. The roar of the cannons, the shouts of fighting men, the screams of the terrified, the prayers of the faithful in the churches. Constantine heard it all. It was the sound of his world ending. He thought of his ancestors. He thought of the great emperors before him. He had tried his best. He had done all he could. Now only one thing remained. He would not be captured. He would not see his city plundered while he lived. He would die as an emperor should, defending his people and his faith. The moment had come. Emperor Constantine VII made a solemn decision. He stood in a quiet chamber, away from the immediate din of battle. He began to remove his imperial regalia. The rich purple cloak, the symbol of his high office, was laid aside. The jeweled belt, glittering with gems that spoke of power and wealth, was unfastened. His special boots, dyed the imperial purple, were taken off. These were the signs of an emperor. They set him apart from other men. They showed his authority, his sacred duty to rule and protect. By taking off these symbols, Constantine was saying something important. He was no longer just the emperor, he was a soldier, he was one of his men. He would fight and die alongside them. Without the purple, he was like any other defender of Constantinople. This act showed his humility, it showed his courage, it showed his deep love for his city and his people. He did not want to be easily recognized by the enemy. He did not want to be taken alive as a prize. He chose the death of a common soldier. He likely said a silent prayer. Perhaps he thought of his family. Perhaps he thought of all the people who depended on him. The weight of 1,000 years of Roman and Byzantine history rested upon his shoulders. He was the last in a long line. He knew this was a turning point in history. The fall of Constantinople would change the world. He felt this burden deeply. But his resolve did not waver. He had made his peace with God and with his own fate. He was ready to face what was coming with dignity. Now he stood dressed as a simple soldier. No crown, no purple, just a man, a brave man, a king who chose to die with his people. This was his final act of leadership. It was an act of profound symbolism. It told his men and it told history that their emperor was with them to the very end. He would not hide. He would not flee. He would share their fate. He picked up his sword. He was ready. The distant sounds of fighting grew closer, calling him to his destiny. Emperor Constantine II gathered his remaining loyal soldiers. They were a small band, Italians, Greeks, men from different lands, all united by their bravery. All knew this was their last stand. There was a grim determination in their eyes. There were no grand speeches now, just a shared understanding. They would sell their lives dearly. They would fight for every street, every stone of their beloved city. The air was thick with smoke and the smell of blood. The sounds of battle were deafening. He mounted his horse. With his small group of companions, he rode towards the breach. He rode towards the fiercest fighting. He saw the enemy everywhere. He saw them pouring into the city like a flood. He saw his people fighting desperately. He saw heroism. He saw despair. But he did not falter. He charged into the chaos. His sword flashed in the dim light. He was an emperor, yes, but now he was also a warrior, fighting for the very soul of Byzantium. He shouted encouragement to his men, his voice barely audible above the din. The battle was a whirlwind of confusion. Constantine and his men fought like lions. They cut down enemy soldiers. They stood their ground. The emperor was seen fighting bravely near the gate of St. Romanus. He was in the thickest part of the battle. He was wounded, but he kept fighting. He knew his city was lost, but he would not surrender its spirit. His last moments are shrouded in the fog of war. Legend says he cried out, "The city is fallen, and I am still alive." Then he plunged back into the fray. Constantinople fell on that day, May 29th, 1453. The great city was captured. The Byzantine Empire, which had lasted for more than 1,000 years, was no more. It was a very sad day. It was a major event in history. It marked the end of the Middle Ages for many. It allowed the Ottoman Empire to become even more powerful. The fall of Constantinople sent shockwaves across Europe. Scholars fled the city, taking ancient knowledge with them, which helped spark the Renaissance. Emperor Constantine II died a hero. He became a legend, remembered for his courage in the face of impossible odds.